She once squeezed onto crowded public buses, clutching a paper bag with a cold lunch. But now, she lives in a $5 million Brentwood mansion, commutes in an armored Suburban, wears a Cartier watch worth over $8,000, and runs the United States from a conference table equipped with an encrypted satellite phone. Kamala Harris doesn't own a private jet or build island resorts, but she possesses something many billionaires can't buy: the power to rewrite the rules of the game. So, who is she? How did a girl of Indian and Jamaican descent, raised in Oakland, become the second most powerful woman in America? This isn't just a story of wealth and style, it's a chapter of grit, politics, and the American dream reimagined. Welcome to the lifestyle of Kamala Harris. Could a little girl once sitting in a stroller amidst protests have imagined that one day she would stand at the pinnacle of American power? It's a paradoxical image, a child too young to speak, too innocent to understand the world, yet already witnessing rupture, resistance, and chance for justice. It wasn't the dream beginning any little girl would hope for, but that very moment planted a seed in Kamala Harris, a seed of aspiration that would grow with time and blossom on the American political stage. Kamala Devi Harris was born on October 20, 1964, in Oakland, California, a city better known for civil rights movements than prosperity. Her mother, Shyamala Gopalan, was a scientist from India who left her conservative homeland in pursuit of a career and intellectual freedom. Her father, Donald Harris, was a Jamaican scholar immersed in economic theory and the American dream. They met at UC Berkeley, where protests, books, and progressive ideals infused the atmosphere of the 1960s. But life isn't always like a philosophy textbook. When Kamala was just 7, her parents divorced. The debates over Marx and equality gave way to long, quiet nights, as her mother, now a single woman of color, struggled to raise 2 daughters in a small rented apartment, where daylight barely slipped through the narrow window, and the cold of night was something no one paid attention to. There were no maids, and though her father was still somewhere out there, it was her mother, with small hands and an iron will, who became the sole pillar for the girls. Kamala has recalled seeing her mother wake up at 5 a.m., prepare breakfast, drop her daughters off at school, and then rush to the lab. And by night, she became their first teacher, teaching Kamala to read, to write, but above all, to understand justice. Not from books, but from life. The difference was clear from an early age. While white children in Pacific Heights, with their rows of mansions, rode new bicycles and ate breakfast from porcelain bowls, Kamala jostled on public buses, wore hand-me-downs from her cousins, and carried lunch in crumpled paper bags. Not because she chose to be different, but because she was different. At school, suspicious looks and questions like, "Where are you really from?" were constant. As a child of color, of mixed heritage, and of a single-parent home, Kamala didn't fit into any of America's comfortable molds at the time. Then came another upheaval in 1976. Her family moved to Montreal, Canada. For a 12-year-old girl still learning to adjust in the U.S., starting over in a new country, with a different language, different laws, harsher weather, and worst of all, utter isolation, was daunting. No one spoke her native language. Her classmates looked at her like she was from another planet. Had Kamala kept a journal, perhaps she would have written, "That's where I learned to smile, even when no one smiled back." A harsh lesson from her Montreal days. But what made Kamala different wasn't the scars. It was how she learned to stitch them up. After high school, she didn't choose Harvard or Yale, the traditional pride of white elites. She chose Howard University, a historically black college, where she not only learned to argue, but also to lead. She didn't shy away from speaking in front of hundreds of students, even if her heart raced. She joined social organizations, took on student leadership roles, and forged a steely will amid skeptical glances. Picture this: a young woman, brown-skinned, curly-haired, standing in the hallways of Howard, gazing at portraits of predecessors, Martin Luther King Jr., Thurgood Marshall, and wondering, will my name one day be spoken alongside theirs? It wasn't just a dream, it was the beginning of a declaration. And from those testing years, Kamala Harris forged an unbreakable resolve, the foundation that would carry her from small courtrooms to the doorstep of the White House. But the journey was far from easy. For every door she knocked on, a voice replied, "Women like you aren't qualified." But guess what? She didn't just knock, she kicked that door wide open. In the next chapter, we'll explore how Kamala Harris turned those wounds into power, from an unknown attorney in a modest courtroom to the woman standing just one heartbeat away from the White House. Who would have thought that the girl once crammed into a public bus, her shirt soaked with sweat under the California heat, would one day sit in an armored limousine surrounded by the blaring sirens of a Secret Service motorcade? Kamala Harris was not born into privilege, nor did she inherit a political network. She started from a place society often labels as marginal: a woman, a person of color, the child of immigrants, raised by a single mother. No safety net, no family political ties. She walked alone into a world that wasn't ready to open its doors to someone like her. And yet, step by step, she forced them open. After graduating from UC Hastings Law School in 1989, Kamala didn't take the well-worn path of elite law students, joining high-paying firms and securing six-figure salaries. Instead, she chose to work as a deputy district attorney in Alameda County, a modest, low-paying job that meant facing harsh realities every day: violence, abuse, crime. While her peers climbed the ranks of corporate law, Kamala spent her days in small courtrooms, where justice was often murky and hard-earned. There she faced the true taste of isolation. As a woman of color in a space dominated by white men, she was shut out of strategy meetings, sidelined from major cases. No one called her a rising star. In fact, someone once told her outright, "You should know your place." But Kamala did know her place, and it wasn't in the back row. She was always the last to leave the office at night. No one made her do it, but she knew that if she wanted to break through the bias, being equal wasn't enough. She had to be better. Twice as good, just to be seen as half as worthy. After nearly a decade of quietly building experience, in 2003, she entered her first political race, running for district attorney of San Francisco. The pundits didn't believe she had a chance. She was a woman, she was Black and South Asian, and she had bold reform ideas, all seen as unacceptable to the establishment. But Kamala won. And not only did she win, she changed the system from within. She launched the Back on Track program, helping first-time offenders reintegrate into society through job training, counseling, and employment. The result? The recidivism rate dropped from 53% to just 10%, an extraordinary achievement. While many politicians shouted about reform, Kamala quietly turned it into data. In 2010, she ran for Attorney General of California, the top law enforcement role in the most populous U.S. state. Again, the doubters lined up. But Kamala did what no one thought possible, becoming the first woman of color to hold the position. From there, she moved to a bigger stage, with more complex challenges, and her first major controversy. In 2015, Her office appealed a court ruling requiring gender-affirming surgery for a transgender inmate. The case quickly drew attention from the media and LGBTQ+ community. Kamala later clarified that the decision was signed as part of standard administrative procedure, not a personal choice, and acknowledged it should have been reconsidered. To some, the episode was a minor blemish. To others, it raised questions about her progressive values. But what can't be denied is that Kamala Harris didn't hide. She explained, she listened, and she moved forward. In 2016, she was elected to the U.S. Senate, representing California, becoming only the second woman of color ever elected to the Senate and the first to represent America's most populous state. It didn't take long for Kamala to make her mark. Her sharp questioning and firm voice during Senate hearings often became TV highlights. Clear, direct, unafraid, she quickly earned the nickname, "a warrior whose weapon is her words." And then came 2020. Amid a nation fractured by a pandemic, racial reckoning, and economic crisis, Joe Biden chose her as his running mate. When the Biden-Harris ticket won, Kamala Harris didn't just make history, she redefined what was possible for women in American politics. No longer a dream, no longer an exception. She turned the unimaginable into reality. And from there, a new chapter began, the financial one. Her newfound prominence brought a book deal worth over $750,000, with titles including The Truths We Hold and Smart on Crime. As vice president, her annual salary is $235,100, along with security, travel, and government housing perks. Marrying Doug Emhoff, a successful attorney who once earned up to $1.5 million a year, made them one of Washington's most powerful and affluent couples. Their combined net worth, according to 2021 financial disclosures, exceeds $5 million, excluding the growing value of her personal brand. Kamala Harris, the girl once tucked in a stroller at protest marches, is now a symbol of political, financial, and cultural power. But what endears her to middle-aged Americans isn't just her success or wealth, it's the contrast. They see a journey that wasn't easy, with no miracles. Everything came from relentless work, unshakable will, and the belief that if justice doesn't exist, you must create it yourself. Compared to Mike Pence, who grew up in a stable, middle-class home in Indiana, with a father in management and a stay-at-home mother, Kamala's rise from a broken immigrant family to the summit of politics is nothing short of a breakthrough. A truth no one can deny. And if you think this is the end of the road, think again. The path she's walked wasn't paved in red carpet, but brick by brick of effort, guided by ideals. And now, every step Kamala Harris takes leaves a mark, not just on the political stage, but on the marble floors of a life she carved out for herself. Once crammed on a fume-filled public bus, clutching a crumpled paper bag with a cold lunch, Kamala Harris now wakes to birdsong outside a heavily guarded residence, sipping coffee from a sleek Italian machine atop a marble counter, and dialing world leaders through encrypted lines. From a frizzy-haired immigrant girl with worn-out shoes, she has risen to become the second most powerful woman in the United States. Not by miracle, but by a will sharp enough to make politics take notice. The San Francisco loft, where a new era began. In 2004, still serving as district attorney, Kamala Harris bought her first home, a loft apartment in Soma, south of Market, San Francisco, a neighborhood known for tech elites and emerging power players. The loft, over 1,000 square feet, featured industrial-style high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, and abundant natural light pouring into every corner. She purchased it for $489,000, a modest figure by today's standards, but deeply meaningful for someone who started from scratch. Nearly 2 decades later, she sold it for $799,000. Not just a smart investment, but a milestone marking her transition from a public servant to a political and financial icon. The Westlight apartment in Washington, D.C., a glass masterpiece in the heart of power. Upon becoming a U.S. Senator, Kamala and her husband, Doug Emhoff, purchased an ultra-modern apartment at Westlight in the West End of Washington, D.C. Spanning 1,700 square feet, it wasn't just a home. It was a luxurious hideaway at the epicenter of power. Bought for $1.775 million, the apartment boasted white oak floors, a European-style open kitchen, hospital-grade air filtration, and a private gym for residents. When Kamala became vice president, they sold it for $1.85 million. But the image of her, brewing coffee in a glass-walled kitchen overlooking the streets of D.C., remains a symbol of elegance and modern leadership. Brentwood Villa, Los Angeles. Quiet luxury without flaunting it. Unlike Hollywood moguls who flaunt their mansions through lavish parties, Kamala Harris chose discretion and top-tier security. Her Brentwood home, purchased in 2012 for $2.7 million, sits on a spacious lot, surrounded by artistic iron gates and high-tech security systems. The house spans over 3,500 square feet, with a private pool, a wide-open backyard, and handcrafted wood details that make it both cozy and sophisticated. Today, its market value is around $5 million, a vivid testament to Kamala's savvy real estate sense and refined taste. Number 1 Observatory Circle. The official vice presidential residence. As vice president, Kamala Harris now lives at the official residence of the U.S. Vice President, located at the U.S. Naval Observatory, also known as Number 1 Observatory Circle. The Queen Anne-style mansion spans over 9,100 square feet, with 6 bedrooms, 6 fireplaces, a canopy of mature trees, and balconies overlooking the woods. While the furnishings are government-sponsored, Kamala has curated her personal space into a sanctuary amid the relentless pace of political life. Here, she hosts dignitaries in a historic wood-paneled dining room and occasionally prepares light meals herself, a gentle reminder that she remains a woman of the people. Kamala Harris's assets don't just sit in valuable real estate. They travel with her, secured under armored plating, through streets guarded with absolute precision. Chevrolet Suburban, power and security without compromise. As vice president, Kamala often travels in a specially outfitted Chevrolet Suburban, valued at around $85,000, fully equipped. This SUV is not only powerful and spacious, but also reinforced with armor, bulletproof glass, and encrypted communication systems, the vehicle of choice for many world leaders. It's not a car for showing off, but for protecting a nation. Chevrolet Bolt EV, a statement of values. In addition to her official SUV, Kamala Harris also owns a Chevrolet Bolt EV, a compact, environmentally friendly electric car priced around $30,000. It's not flashy, but it makes a clear statement about a greener future, perfectly aligned with her stance on climate and sustainable transportation policies. But Kamala's sophistication isn't only found in armored vehicles or elegant homes. It's in the small choices she makes when she steps into public view. Jewelry and style, pearls and watches that speak louder than status. At her historic inauguration, Kamala Harris wore a classic string of pearls, a symbol of grace and quiet strength. It wasn't her most expensive piece of jewelry, but one she's worn throughout her career, representing the women who paved the way. She also owns a Cartier Tank Française watch, timeless and dignified, valued at around $8,400. In Kamala's world, everything she wears isn't just material. It's a statement. Behind that carefully composed appearance, Kamala Harris maintains a surprisingly down-to-earth life, as if to remind us that no matter how high the office, we all need a place to return to. Personal interests, simple joys amid grandeur. Despite her million-dollar homes and position in America's highest office, Kamala Harris keeps her morning coffee ritual, cooks with her husband on weekends, and shops at local farmers markets in D.C. She loves Italian cuisine, collects cookbooks, and once admitted, "The most relaxing thing is chopping onions without interruption." She tends to her plants, reads novels, and sometimes makes unannounced appearances at cultural events, not for politics, but because she genuinely cares. Unique hobbies, where her personality comes to life. Unlike many politicians who cling to stiff public personas, Kamala Harris embraces a colorful personal world that often defies expectations. Few know that she's a vinyl enthusiast, collecting classic records since her days at Howard University. Her collection includes rare cuts from Aretha Franklin, Ella Fitzgerald, and especially Tupac Shakur, whom she once said spoke the heart of an entire generation. In a high-tech world, this love for analog sound reflects her connection to a raw, authentic, heritage-rich America. Another unexpected passion? Formula One racing. Kamala follows the races closely, analyzes drivers, and has even attended motorsport events. It's not a typical political hobby, but for her, the strategy and thrill of the track mirror politics. Unpredictable, intense, and not for the faint-hearted. She's also openly shared that she owns a handgun, not for image or political posturing, but out of a belief in personal freedom and the right to self-defense. This has surprised some in her party, but it highlights one undeniable truth. Kamala Harris doesn't fit the mold. She's a balance of conviction and individuality. Even in million-dollar homes and the corridors of power, Kamala Harris keeps deeply personal corners of her life. Sometimes a late-night jazz tune, sometimes a Grand Prix in Monaco, and sometimes a home-cooked meal with no cameras rolling. These moments define the Kamala Harris who stands apart. Independent, layered, and impossible to duplicate. On her journey from a local prosecutor to the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris was never immune to controversy. At every step up the ladder of power, she navigated criticism, opposition, and at times, misunderstanding. But it was precisely in those moments that her political resolve was most clearly forged. As District Attorney of San Francisco, Harris launched a controversial anti-truancy initiative. She argued that children skipping school without justification risked falling into crime and jeopardizing their futures. By prosecuting parents of chronically truant children, with the aim of compelling them to engage in the solution, she hoped to drive systemic change. The policy was praised by some for its emphasis on deterrence and accountability, but also met backlash from those who felt it disproportionately affected low-income families already under immense pressure. Harris later acknowledged that the rollout lacked nuance and refined her messaging, emphasizing that her ultimate goal was to keep children in school, not to punish their parents. As California Attorney General, she maintained a tough stance when she prosecuted Carl Ferrer, CEO of Backpage.com, a website accused of facilitating prostitution and human trafficking, including of minors. Though the case encountered significant legal hurdles involving free speech rights and the protections of the Communications Decency Act, Harris persisted. Years later, Ferrer pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate, demonstrating that her pursuit wasn't just symbolic, but yielded tangible results. To child protection advocates and trafficking survivors, she emerged as a bold defender. Yet to media freedom activists, it marked a fine and potentially dangerous line between protection and censorship. However, not all of Harris's decisions received applause. During her time as district attorney, she faced criticism for not publicly releasing files related to sexual abuse within the Catholic Church. For many older Americans, the church abuse scandal remains a deep scar, and Harris's decision to keep the files sealed raised eyebrows. She defended her action as a move to protect victim identities and to stay within legal boundaries, rather than an act of shielding the institution. Still, the episode remains a blemish on her legal legacy, a reminder that even legally sound decisions can carry public relations risks in politics. Another prominent controversy came in 2015, when her office, by then she was Attorney General, appealed a ruling requiring gender-affirming surgery for a transgender inmate. Though the decision followed internal legal protocol, it disappointed the LGBTQ+ community and raised doubts about her commitment to equality. Harris later openly expressed her own dissatisfaction with how the case was handled and worked to reform prison policies. Her willingness to take responsibility and evolve after missteps won respect from many moderates, who saw in her not just a politician, but a public servant willing to learn from experience. Compared to contemporaries like Amy Klobuchar, a former prosecutor and senator known for a moderate tone, Harris has shown herself to be more assertive, sometimes more confrontational. While Klobuchar favors bipartisan consensus, Harris doesn't shy away from divisive issues: LGBTQ+ rights, abortion access, and justice reform. This forthrightness has earned her critics among conservatives, but also a fiercely loyal base who believe she will speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. While some of her decisions have drawn scrutiny, it is her composure in the aftermath of controversy that has set her apart. She doesn't deflect blame, scapegoat subordinates, or rewrite history. Instead, she clarifies, accepts accountability, and moves forward. That is how one maintains a consistent identity, even if that identity doesn't please everyone. What's interesting is that these controversies haven't diminished Kamala Harris's lifestyle. If anything, they lend more gravity to her choices. When she wears a Cartier watch or lives in her Brentwood home, it's not just a sign of status. It's a statement. I've weathered the trials, and I'm still standing. Her lifestyle isn't about ostentation. It's about triumph. Triumph earned after enduring relentless public scrutiny, where every mistake is magnified and every win tested by blood and reason. Kamala Harris is not a flawless politician, but she is the kind of person who, when she stumbles under the national spotlight, can still rise, recalibrate, and keep walking, as if that too is part of the game. When you stand at the pinnacle of power, is it wealth and fame that define you? Or is it the doors you open for others that truly measure who Kamala Harris is? Kamala Harris is known not only for her remarkable political career, but also for her financial acumen and enduring commitment to social justice. Together with her husband, attorney Doug Emhoff, she holds an estimated net worth of around $8 million. This wealth stems from her political career, about $750,000 in book royalties, and, most notably, Emhoff's earnings from corporate law and carefully selected real estate investments over the years. Unlike public figures who chase trends, Harris and Emhoff have built their financial foundation as a means to support their public service freely and sustainably. Their portfolio includes valuable real estate holdings, retirement accounts, and long-term funds. Every financial decision reflects a long-term vision, much like Harris's career itself, built not through shortcuts, but through strategy and persistence. Yet, the most meaningful investments don't appear on any financial ledger. They lie in what Kamala Harris has given to her community. As vice president, she launched the Central America Forward initiative, securing over $4.2 billion in private sector commitments to address the root causes of migration in Central America. Part of that investment didn't go toward airports or border walls, but toward building schools, creating jobs, and anchoring people to their homeland with hope. In education, she helped drive a $17 billion funding commitment for HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, institutions that have nurtured generations of black intellectuals. And for the millions of seniors living on Social Security, she championed the effort to cap insulin prices at $35 per month, a life-saving change. As one elderly woman in Ohio wrote in a thank you letter, "Because of you, I no longer have to choose between medicine and food." In the political arena, Kamala Harris has left a mark not only through words, but through decisive action. She holds the historic record for the most tie-breaking votes cast in the U.S. Senate, 33 times, in a chamber split 50-50. Many of those votes were pivotal in passing major legislation, from the American Rescue Plan to the Inflation Reduction Act, the largest climate investment in U.S. history. Each time she spoke, she wasn't just representing her party. She was speaking for millions who had never had a voice in those rooms before. Beyond domestic policy, Kamala Harris has brought the image of American female leadership to the world stage. She stood alongside French President Emmanuel Macron to mend diplomatic ties after the submarine dispute, sat between Tokyo and Seoul to encourage trilateral cooperation, and spoke firmly in 2022 to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On the global stage, she isn't just the vice president. She's a reminder that American strength doesn't have to shout to be heard. But perhaps Kamala Harris's greatest legacy won't be found in budgets, policies, or the office she occupies at the Naval Observatory. It lies in the foundation she's laid, so that a young black girl in Oakland today can dream of the White House, not as an exception, but as a birthright. With every step, she has done what many once believed impossible. She flung open doors that once seemed permanently shut to women of color, to the children of immigrants, to those without family in the halls of Congress. And once a door to power has been thrown wide open, it can never be closed the same way again. Her legacy isn't just written on paper. It lives in the doors she has opened, turning the American dream from a privilege into a possibility.